The saying goes, mother knows best. But coming from this mother, it's a diabolical command. So strong is her will. When things don't go her way, her kids are there to carry out her evil bidding. In a loyalty forged and manipulated by a wicked attraction. Merced, California, known as the gateway to Yosemite. Like most cities, this valley hamlet sees home values skyrocket in the 1990s. In boom times like these, anyone can make a buck. But when the market busts, times get tough, revealing everyone's true colors. 37-year-old Laura Hernandez is living the American dream. A big house, an adoring husband, and beautiful children. But scratch the surface, and the picture-perfect matriarch is hiding a nightmarish past.
Laura's mother was a very cold, hard woman, and frankly, there wasn't a lot of love or mothering in that environment. Each of us draws from our own experience as a child and what our parents taught us or did to us. In Laura's case, what she got inflicted upon her was a tremendous amount of hatred and aggression.
Thank you.
Now all grown up, that's what she dishes back to the world and to her kids.
Laura projects herself into each of her children. Eric is a boy, and boys are valued in the Mexican culture. She saw him as her idealized way of making her own childhood better.
Then there's Alma. Out of Laura's 5 children, Alma is her favorite punching bag.
Can we do that for you, Mama?
Yes.
This was the child that Laura chose to pick on. There's a bully mentality with Laura, and she's bullying her own child. In some ways, I feel like Laura is like some of those animals that eat the young that's deformed or weak.
She projected all of her hatred and all of the rage from her own early child victimization into her daughter. This is a mother who controls her children. She's not parenting them. She manipulates them with her anger.
Alma, please! I'm talking to your brother. Go get more juice.
For years, her children struggled to win favor.
Well, the kids would jump whenever they heard her voice or whenever they would see her. They would get scared and smarten up really quick.
For Laura, loyalty is prized above love, and the children are tolerated only as long as they're useful.
So the children would do anything to avoid raising the ire, raising that rage of their mother.
Laura always gets what she wants. So when her relationship with current husband Alberto Macias sours, she has a team in place to make things right. It's not the situation Laura imagines 15 years earlier when she and Alberto first meet. Alberto is a regular at the bar where Laura works. He's a good catch, an American citizen, a construction worker with a union card, and he truly loves her.
Alberto was a very hard worker. Any dime, money, dollar, whatever he had in his pocket went straight to her and the kids.
Alberto had a very hard life. He had to leave home at a very early age, and he didn't have an optimal family experience, and that was very likely something he longed for.
Laura's looking for a man who's stable, who loves her and is devoted to her, but ultimately, who she can still control.
Alberto's deep pockets fit the bill. His friends and family try to warn him things are moving a little too fast. He hears none of it.
Other people can see through Laura. They can see that she's not on the up and up, and they can see that she's not trustworthy. But Alberto needs her as much as she needs him.
Laura was like the queen. You can even say her name because he will go ballistic on you. Don't talk about her. That's my wife. You respect her, because if you don't, I'll make you respect her.
And once Laura and Alberto get married, they have 2 children. And I think it really sets in stone what she's created. Now we have a family.
Alberto adopts Laura's 3 older children and builds the growing family a dream house in the Northern California city of Merced.
Want to give Laura everything what she wanted. Everything. The house, they built it the way she wanted.
Laura becomes his puppet master, dominating Alberto's every move and thought.
I believe there was a time when Jose's mom and father had came from Mexico to visit the kids.
Hola, ¿cómo está?
Hola.
¿Dónde está Alberto?
No está aquí.
¿Cómo,
Él no
cómo
está.
dices que
Él
no
no
está
está.
aquí? Pero
Vengan otro día.
And she had shut the door on their face. And that was it. So my in-laws had to get a ticket back to Mexico.
Laura wasn't going to let Alberto have any of the influences that could cause him to change his mind or question her influence in the family and in the household.
And down.
So my oldest brother called my brother on it, Alberto, right? And then they got into a big argument, and they never spoke each other for like 4 years.
His denial goes into overdrive with Laura. He makes excuses for her. He sees her as strong or powerful.
Maybe Alberto finds her strength hot, or maybe it terrifies him.
The minute she didn't have money in her pocket, she was there blowing up his phone,
Laura,
calling him names.
what are you talking about?
Alberto Macias made very good money during the housing boom in California. And when the housing market started to plummet,
I don't have that money. I told you.
he was out of work.
Write it.
He hadn't paid his union dues.
It starts to create a lot of pressure for the relationship because Laura really just saw Alberto as a means to an end. And now that means is gone.
The stress in the household begins to build. Her demands can no longer be met because Alberto's not making money any longer. It's at this point that he really begins to lose favor in her eyes.
The stress reaches the breaking point when 14-year-old Alma and her sister accuse their stepfather of sexually molesting them. Laura kicks Alberto out of the house.
It was 4 in the morning. I received a call from Laura saying, I'm just calling you to let you know that your brother is abusing my kids sexually. So I'm gonna call the cops because this is not happening.
I want you to take this.
Alberto swears he's innocent. Laura refuses to listen and takes her daughter's word over her husband's.
Laura was probably really surprised and also appalled that this would have happened. But at the same time, it was coming from the child that she abused the most herself.
Alma, go get more juice.
For Alberto, the allegations are devastating. He has tried very hard to create the perfect family in order to provide for his children what he didn't have. And now this allegation, whether it's true or not, causes him to feel separated and removed from the family.
Take everything with you.
After 2 hellacious weeks, Alma and her sister both admit they lied about the allegations.
And the reason that they made this up, they told police, was because he had said some things to Laura that they didn't like. So Alberto was never charged with molesting these children.
I don't want you in my house anymore.
But the damage is done.
Leave now. I don't want
The investigation was considered closed at that point. Even though the case had been dropped against him, Child Protective Services still wouldn't let him move back into the home with the children.
Unemployed, humiliated, and banished from his house, Alberto crashes at a cheap motel and works part-time at a flea market to pay the bills.
Alberto would rent a room and then the next morning check out and take all of his things out of the room
and they'd clean the room, and he had to do that every day because he couldn't pay more than 1 day at a time.
Though he's broke, Alberto has some other assets that Laura's eager to tap.
Laura doesn't want to separate the family because then she loses her control over the dynamics that are happening.
It did seem odd that Alberto was out of the house and Laura was still visiting with them, spending the night with them, basically kind of like having conjugal visits.
The afterglow doesn't last.
Abre. Te lo dije. Me engañabas, te iba a matar. Yes, I do.
And one night, Laura's temper is measured by the length of a 12-inch blade.
I'm gonna make you rich.
In June 2009, Alberto Macias has lost his savings and his family, but his wife Laura Hernandez isn't out of the picture. Some say Laura wants to bleed him dry, literally planting a knife in his belly.
He got stabbed in the stomach with a big old knife.
Alberto gets his wound stitched up, but the mystery of how it happened becomes his scarlet letter, despite his attempts to hide it.
When the police question Alberto about the stabbing, he covers up and he tells the police that he did it himself. Now, this might look like love on the outside, as if he was trying to protect Laura, but in fact, it was most likely his denial.
Alberto had told my husband that he was playing with the knife and he had stabbed himself, but he had told me that he had got jumped by a bunch of guys on the street and that they had stabbed him.
Call it a gut feeling, but Alberto's family believes his estranged wife Laura is responsible, and there's nothing they can do to help him. Five months after the stabbing, Alberto's wound is healed, and he's made friends with Karen Mosby, the motel desk clerk.
You used to work in construction, didn't you?
Yeah.
I have an idea.
Karen asks him to remodel her guest house in Dos Palos, about 30 minutes from Merced.
He said, well, I'm not working right now, and you're my friend. He said, why don't we go see what you have to have done? And I said, well, it's too cold. I want it insulated. He said, well, let's go see. And I picked him up and took him over there, and he looked at it, he said, I could do this.
Surprisingly, Laura pitches in.
Laura was helping Alberto put the insulation in.
Everything okay?
He would cut the boards, put the insulation in, she'd nail the boards back up.
Despite the new insulation, Karen's feeling a definite chill from Laura.
Laura wouldn't look you straight in the eye. She just kind of bowed her head. She spoke very little English, and I spoke broken Spanish, and I just, there was an aura. There was just a feeling that something wasn't quite right.
As foreclosure looms over Alberto and Laura's home, Alberto sees Karen's project as the solution to everything.
Can we move here and pay rent and make it our home?
And I could tell by the look on her face she didn't like that, but that was his goal, to be able to get into a cheaper house than what they were losing and have his family together again.
Well, maybe we can work something out.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen.
When I went to see the place, you know, I'm like, oh wow, the way your wife is, she coming and living here? No way, man. Because she was like, oof, like, she thought she was like from the high class, way up in Beverly Hills or something.
Laura's losing control of Alberto.
Cheers.
He's starting to call the shots.
He can no longer provide her what she wants from him, and she begins to shift her focus to how he can serve her better dead.
Soon, a solution to all her problems presents itself.
Alberto's now living in a house way out in the country. Meanwhile, Laura's at home. She's maintaining control in the household. And she begins to get the bills for the insurance premiums, and she begins to put two and two together.
It's a simple equation. If Alberto's dead, Laura's rich. But she can't risk spoiling her manicure.
So she saw the opportunity that Alberto's in the house alone. The trigger man can get inside, pull the trigger without anyone seeing, and leave the scene.
When a queen executes somebody, they don't do it themselves. They just order somebody else to do it for them. And I think Laura's starting to think in that way.
Who can Laura trust to kill Alberto? She has no friends, only her children. Does she dare involve them in murder? Alma, her now 15-year-old daughter, helps her make the decision. Alma's in love with her 16-year-old classmate, Edgar Garcia, and she's pregnant.
When she found out she was pregnant, she asked her mother for a hug, and her mother did not hug her.
I need to talk to you. Something really...
Instead, Laura sees the pregnancy as an opportunity to hatch a scheme. If Alma's boyfriend can make a life, maybe he can be convinced to take a life. Fair is fair.
Because we need to kill him.
Laura can have somebody that she never really liked. Some guy that got her 15-year-old daughter pregnant, have him do the dirty work. If something happens that they get caught, he can take the fall for it.
Dusting off Alma's recanted charge that Alberto molested her, Laura leverages Edgar's love for her daughter to bend him to her will.
Do you know whether Alma's father is not here today?
No.
He tried to abuse her.
This is how we're gonna get retribution. This is how we're gonna take care of the problem.
Do you think that's right?
Help me get revenge by killing the person who violated her.
Edgar offers to find a big guy to beat Alberto up. Though young and naive, the 16-year-old isn't down with committing murder.
He deserved what?
Laura switches tactics.
No, yo no sé, I don't know.
See, another psychological weapon that Laura uses is that Alberto actually wants to die, and so in some ways they're doing him a favor. This is what he wants. Don't be sad for him.
Laura tells the kids Alberto's stab wound was his attempt to kill himself.
All the other children had been told by Laura that Alberto actually wanted to die to provide for him.
Think about it.
I don't know if I can do this.
Yes, you can.
Edgar's not quite convinced, so Laura makes it more personal.
Yes. If you don't do this.
Laura began to pressure him to kill Alberto Macias. I'm not going to let you see my teenage daughter anymore. I'm going to force her to have an abortion. I'm going to move her to Mexico so you never have any contact with her again.
Do you understand me?
To ice the cake, Laura offers him a share of the insurance payout.
But if you do this...
She told Edgar Garcia, I'll give you $5,000 if you kill Alberto Macias. And then otherwise you will never see your daughter or my daughter.
$5,000. $5,000.
The web is spun. Edgar's caught.
He had not only the money motive, he had the motive because he wanted to have the child with Laura's daughter.
Laura Hernandez tasked Edgar with going out and getting a gun. He actually went out to the streets of Merced, but he came back with a gun and showed it to Laura. Laura's response to him was, I don't know where you got that, but that gun's too small. All that's gonna do is hurt him and make him mad. Take it back and get a bigger one.
Edgar finally gets a man-sized weapon to do the job. But there's another hitch. The 16-year-old trigger man can't drive. He'll need a lift to the crime scene, the house where Alberto stayed. Laura can count on only one person to drive the getaway car, 20-year-old Eric, the good son.
He was amounting to things. He was supposed to be going to college, doing good.
Do you know how to do that?
Hungry for his mother's approval, it's not hard for Eric to divert onto the path of evil.
Eric was easy to recruit. He was the brains of the family. He took care of the family business. He knew that by getting the life insurance money, they could possibly keep their family home.
A very interesting psychological phenomenon that happens when you get people to do things for you is that you actually end up liking the person more. And this has been shown through research. And with her children, I think it was more on a controlling level. And I think she gave her love and took it away at will. So if you don't do this for me, well, I guess I'm not gonna be very nice to you today. And I guess I'm not gonna love you today. And her children always knew that they had to prove their love.
Mama, okay, I want to go with them.
Eager for this rare chance to bond with her mom, Alma insists on riding along too.
Even though she was a teenager, she's really very much like a child inside, very much the puppy of the family.
So you're gonna drive?
But she carries out this crime in the hopes that this perhaps finally will earn her mother's love.
Okay, do you know where you're gonna park?
For Eric, killing Alberto can save their home from foreclosure. For Alma and Edgar, killing Alberto will save their love and their baby. Everyone wins, except poor Alberto.
You hear about people hiring contracted killers to murder someone, but it's not too often that you find someone who gets their own kids involved.
The family that slays together stays together. What more could a mother want?
I want to go with them. I want to help.
While most mothers have trouble convincing their teens to clean their room, Queen of Mean Laura Hernandez is commanding her children to murder their own stepfather.
Okay, if that's what you want.
The plan to send her husband Alberto Macias out with a bang starts with Laura setting the trap.
She makes herself available physically to him because it's ultimately going to help her plot to get him killed.
Her kids, Eric and Alma, along with Alma's boyfriend Edgar, stand by. They used coded text messages to communicate. Alberto's fat boy, and his landlord Karen's the old lady. They wait for Laura's signal to go.
I think using the denigrating names in the text messages is really a way to dehumanize everything versus really thinking about Alberto as a person.
The plan's simple. Laura seduces him. Alberto falls asleep. She bolts. Then, Edgar sneaks in and kills him. Execution style. But Alberto spoils everything by going out with Karen. Frustrated, Laura sends the kids home. The killer queen needs her beauty sleep, and she passes out before Alberto returns. The next night, Laura slides into Alberto's bed again. This time, her mark won't go to sleep.
The text messages in this case were rather interesting. It's time to do it. Did he wake up? Things of that nature.
She postpones the murder again. The kids, reluctant at first, now smell blood. Edgar texts, "Morning won't pass," without doing it. Sunday, March 14th, 2010. Alberto's murder is at the top of Laura's to-do list.
Laura Hernandez woke up at the house with Alberto, and he wasn't feeling well.
I'm gonna give you some medicine. Okay? Are you okay?
She gave him cough medicine to make him drowsy and go to sleep.
Sí. Te voy a hacer tu desayuno favorito. Ven, tómate esto.
And told him that she was going to go next door and cook him breakfast.
Alberto dozes off, and Laura heads to the main house. She's already building her alibi, spotting one of Karen's friends on the walk over. It's really happening.
She came to the door, and she went in, and I had been ill. I was laying on the couch, and she went in the kitchen and proceeded to cook them breakfast. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't watch her.
And while she was at the house, she began her text messaging to Edgar and told Edgar that it was time and that she had left the front door unlocked.
As Alma's baby daddy prepares to kill her stepfather, the teen mother-to-be dashes off a last-minute text to her mother.
I think it's heartbreaking that she texts her mother, "I love you." She's just really craving that same emotion back, but she was never able to get it.
Come on, you two, let's go.
While Laura's in the kitchen, cooking up her alibi, her deadly plot comes to a boil.
Edgar Garcia went in the house and approached Alberto Macias, who was laying on a makeshift bed in the house.
Edgar's only 16 years old. No. But he's going to be a killer dad.
That's you.
No.
Yes. If not, I'm gonna take Alma and the baby away from you.
Threatened with losing his lover and unborn child, Edgar Garcia is coerced into murder.
He left the house after breaking a window to make it look like a break-in.
The hard part's over. Or is it?
The children started talking about actually what had transpired inside that house.
Did you do it?
I did it.
Where did you shoot him?
He was in the bed.
Where did you shoot him? In the head?
I think so.
You think? Is he dead or not?
I don't know. I think so.
I think you need to go back, man.
What?
Eric Hernandez demands Edgar go back to make sure.
He's dead.
I think you need to go
The boy hesitates.
He's gonna come back for you. He's gonna get you.
What do you mean? What?
Until Alma, channeling her mother's will, insists. It's insanely dangerous. This is no time for half measures. Edgar must go back.
Edgar went into the house again.
Turns out he nailed it the first time. But just in case. The kids ditch the murder weapon. 40 minutes after she left the guest house, Laura Hernandez returns with a hot breakfast. Too bad her husband's already gone cold. Now, it's time for her to put on a show.
One of Karen's friends was out front chopping wood. After about 15 minutes, she came back outside, walked up to him, and told him something along the lines that her spouse wouldn't wake up. I think she said it in Spanish.
He come running to the door. He said, "Your friend, I think he's dead." And I went over, and Laura was rubbing his leg, and I felt of his leg. It was already stiffening up, and the blood was all dry on his face. I ran out and I told him to call 911.
Laura does her best to complete her role, but it's pretty clear a grieving widow she is not.
She didn't act the way a loving wife would be expected to act after just finding her husband shot dead.
Laura has a very limited emotional repertoire. It's only when her son shows up that just for a moment, reality sets in and the awareness of destruction happens.
When I arrived on scene, it appeared at first sight that there was only a single gunshot wound to the face. I quite frankly thought that we had a suicide on our hands. The fact that there wasn't a gun present didn't tell me everything. Sometimes in cases like this, family members will do whatever they can to cover up the fact that a loved one's committed suicide. It's not accepted in some cultures, it's not accepted in some religions.
Then, Detective Hale makes a sharp observation.
The window towards the back of the house was broken, and it was obviously broken from the inside out. I didn't know if this was something that was set up to make the crime scene look like a break-in or something of that nature, but the shards of glass that were sticking out, it was apparent to me that nobody had gone in or out through that window. If they had, there would have been some signs of significant bleeding.
As the investigation continues, the widow Hernandez heads back home. And the trigger man, Edgar Garcia, realizes he's made a deal with the devil.
I don't think he really understood or comprehended what he had involved himself in. He thought, in his own mind, that he was only doing what he had to do to protect his rights as a father to his unborn child.
Laura actually reaches really deep and becomes sort of like a mother to him, consoling him, providing him with love and support. But it's all part of her plan because she needs to make sure that everybody is in line and that nobody is going to tell the cops. And how can she do this? By making herself in some way indispensable to the people who were more accountable for the murder.
Laura's doing her part. Edgar's done his. And now it's Eric's turn. The overachiever just can't wait.
The evening of the murder, just after midnight, Eric began calling the life insurance companies trying to make a claim on Alberto Macias' death benefits. Astonishingly, Eric knew the companies that held the life insurance policies and knew their exact dollar amounts. What 19-year-old son knows business about your mom and dad like that? I didn't.
Eric's eagerness raises a red flag at the insurance company. And then the police find a crucial piece of evidence that changes everything.
It wasn't until the next day during the autopsy that the second gunshot wound was revealed because of the blood and the condition of his face out on the scene.
Initially, detectives thought that this may have been a suicide. You don't generally have 2 gunshot wounds to the head as a suicide.
Edgar's second shot into Alberto, made for good measure, actually pours more suspicion on the scene. It doesn't take long for the police to find a motive.
They were losing their home. They barely had enough money to eat, yet the life insurance premiums were paid religiously.
Less than 2 months after her stepfather's murder, Alma gives birth to a baby girl. Edgar's a dad, Laura a grandmother, and the whole family is miserable.
They thought that after Alberto Macias was killed, the money would magically appear and life would be good for him.
The insurance money they counted on hasn't come. Laura has lost her dream home, forcing the family to downsize. At least Alberto's managed to find a spot.
Spread around the urn was a black powder dust. It was there to keep the evil spirits inside. They didn't want Alberto to come out of the urn and haunt them. All the evil spirits were right there in that room alive, and the biggest evil spirit was Laura Hernandez.
But Laura's haunted by the fear Edgar might talk. They have a deal, and she hasn't made good.
She promised Edgar $5,000.
$5,000.
But they had never collected on the insurance, so he'd never gotten any money, but she did give him Alberto Macias's car.
Investigators apply pressure of their own. Laura agrees to take a polygraph. It doesn't go well.
De que tú sabes lo que pasó.
Yo no hice nada. Pueden hacer lo que quieran.
Laura failed the polygraph test miserably. At one point, the polygraph examiner told her that she was showing deception. She looked at the polygraph examiner and told her, "I'm telling my truth." We found that to be odd.
The police have their suspicions. They have a motive. All they need to lock up this mother from hell and her kids is proof. Laura Hernandez thinks she has the perfect plan. Get her kids to kill her husband so she can make off with the life insurance money. But when Alberto Macias' death is ruled a murder, Laura becomes a prime suspect.
De que tú sabes lo que pasó.
Yo no hice nada. Pueden hacer lo que
Investigators catch her lying on her polygraph test. But that's not enough to prove she's a killer.
Lie detector tests are not admissible as evidence in the state of California, but it showed that there was deception. So the evidence here really started to stack up.
In a perverse way, Laura's plan is solid. She relies on the family bond she's created, assuring nobody gets ratted out.
Laura would use anything as long as she could get her way, even her own children, which was one of the things that sets her apart from most other criminals.
Problem is, Edgar, Eric, Alma, and even Laura have already said too much. Not with flapping tongues, but clicking thumbs.
No one expected every one of their text messages to be given to us by court order. When we got those text messages, the murder was outlined to us in a specific timeline. We knew who had done what and what time it had happened.
3 months after Alberto's murder, police close in. They arrest the children and question them separately. Without Laura there to scare them into silence, the tight family begins to unravel.
During our interview with Edgar, he acted as a scared kid.
Under questioning, Edgar begins to crack, admitting he was at the scene of the murder and he wasn't alone.
Who was in the house when you walked in there?
However, Laura's alibi is there in black and white. The text messages clearly spell out that Alberto is still alive when Laura goes over to Karen's, leaving just Edgar as the trigger man.
He's alive when she leaves the house. He's asleep. She's telling you he's asleep. She's already out the door. You're already in the house, and she's on her way out the door. When she walks out the door, he's not shot yet.
He was clearly an immature teenager and was clearly going through extreme psychological pressure.
Did you shoot him, Edgar? You did?
He took responsibility for what he did, but he was so immature that I don't think he understood the full impact of what he had done, that he'd actually taken someone's life.
The House of Cards really fell completely to pieces after Edgar Garcia confessed. Not only did he confess, but he talked about how each of them were involved in this case.
With Edgar's confession, the weak link in Laura's plan snares her along with the rest of her family.
¿Quieres agua?
No.
¿No? Yo quiero darle chance a usted que le salva a sus hijos. En estos textos podemos nosotros probar que usted y su hijo estaban planeando esto. Yo te voy a dar chance.
Tell her she's being booked into jail on murder, conspiracy to commit murder.
Por favor, ayúdame.
Te di,
No hice nada.
te di chance. Ya no puedo hablar con
Quiero
usted.
estar con mis hijos. No hice nada.
Laura got way in over her head because so many people became involved, and ultimately she couldn't have control of the situation.
Her son, Eric, pleaded to a lesser charge and received a 4-year sentence. Edgar pleaded to voluntary manslaughter. He received 22 years in prison. Her daughter, she was tried as a juvenile, so she will be out of jail by the time she's an adult.
As for Laura, she pleads no contest to murder. Her sentence, 15 years to life. Laura and Alberto's young children are placed in foster homes, and the insurance money goes into a trust for them. In the end, one of Laura's children still follows her orders. At Eric's sentencing hearing, he asks the judge for one favor: permission to hug his mother.
Laura was never able to give anybody real love. She saw everybody around her as a means to an end, as a way to get her something that she wants.
I don't think Laura Hernandez deserves to be called a mother. Who would use their kids to commit murder, let alone the murder of their stepfather? She put her kids in harm's way, ruined the rest of their lives, and affected more people than she'll ever know.
Laura Hernandez, the Black Widow, was the wicked attraction. She developed, created, wove relationships that she could draw her victims in and use them for her